Imagine waking up on a summer morning, the air warm, the city alive with the ordinary sounds of life, children playing, merchants calling, church bells ringing across cobblestone streets. Now imagine that within 30 days, the world you have always known will be gone forever. That is exactly what happened to millions of Europeans in the summer of 1914. Not slowly. Not gradually. But with terrifying, unstoppable speed, like watching an avalanche begin with a single stone. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary formally declared war on Serbia. 4 words on an official telegram. And with those 4 words, the most destructive conflict in human history up to that point was set in motion. But here is what most people never learn in school: this moment did not arrive without warning. It was the result of decades of secrets, miscalculations, wounded pride, and dangerous promises made behind closed doors. And the full story is far more gripping than anything you have been told. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, you will never look at history the same way again. To understand July 28, you first have to understand the Europe that existed before it. By the early 20th century, the continent had become something like a room filled with gunpowder. Beautifully decorated. Seemingly stable. But one spark away from total destruction, the great powers of Europe, Britain, France, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire, had spent decades competing for land, trade, and prestige across the globe. Colonial rivalry had created deep resentments. Military spending had exploded. Germany, unified only in 1871, was flexing its industrial and military muscle in ways that alarmed Britain and France. Russia was expanding its influence in the Balkans, a region Austria-Hungary considered its own backyard. Nationalism, the fierce, sometimes fanatical belief that one's ethnic group deserved its own power and territory, was burning through the hearts of people. From Belgrade to Dublin, and then came the alliances. In theory, they were designed to keep the peace through deterrence. In practice, they created a hair-trigger mechanism that would fire the moment any single shot was heard. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy formed the Triple Alliance. Britain, France, and Russia answered with the Triple Entente. By 1914, Europe had arranged itself into 2 armed camps, and every general, every diplomat, and every emperor quietly knew that a war between any 2 major powers would almost certainly drag in all the rest. If you find this history as gripping as I do, consider subscribing. There is so much more of this story still to tell. The spark, when it finally came, arrived in a city called Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, a powerful, complicated man who inspired both respect and personal dislike among Europe's elite. On June 28, 1914, he arrived in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia, a province Austria-Hungary had annexed just 6 years earlier. The visit was intended to show imperial authority. Instead, it would become the most consequential assassination in modern history. Bosnia was alive with nationalist tension. A secret Serbian nationalist organization known as the Black Hand had trained and equipped a small group of young men with one goal: to kill the Archduke and strike a blow for South Slavic independence. The day began with a failed bombing attempt on the royal motorcade. Franz Ferdinand survived. He even continued to his official engagements. But then, in a sequence of events so improbable that historians still marvel at it, the Archduke's driver took a wrong turn, and stopped to reverse directly in front of a 19-year-old assassin named Gavrilo Princip. Princip fired twice. Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie were both dead within the hour. The world paused. Then it held its breath. Vienna's reaction was not grief alone, it was fury. Austro-Hungarian leaders saw the assassination as a direct provocation by Serbia, and they demanded satisfaction. But before they acted, they needed to know they had support. They turned to their powerful German ally and asked a critical question: if Austria-Hungary moved against Serbia and Russia intervened, would Germany stand with them? Kaiser Wilhelm II and his chancellor gave their answer on July 5 and 6. Germany offered what historians have ever since called the blank check, an unconditional promise of support for whatever action Austria-Hungary chose to take. It was a decision made with breathtaking speed and dangerously little thought for its consequences. Emboldened, Vienna drafted an ultimatum to Serbia on July 23, 10 severe demands deliberately crafted to be difficult to fully accept. Serbia, to almost everyone's astonishment, accepted most of them. But not all. And for Austria-Hungary's leaders, partial acceptance was no acceptance at all. The last diplomatic doors were slamming shut. Across Europe, foreign ministers sent urgent telegrams. Russia warned Austria-Hungary not to move against Serbia. Britain's Foreign Secretary Edward Grey frantically proposed international mediation. Even Kaiser Wilhelm, reading Serbia's response, reportedly scribbled in the margins that there was no longer any reason for war, but the machinery of mobilization. Once begun, proved almost impossible to stop. This is the moment, right here, that deserves your full attention. Because this is where history turned. If this story is opening your eyes to something you were never taught, hit that like button. It helps more people find their way to the truth. On July 28, 1914, exactly 1 month after the shots in Sarajevo, Austria-Hungary sent its formal declaration of war to Serbia. It arrived not by royal courier or diplomatic envoy, but by telegram. A message that took seconds to transmit. A message that would take years and millions of lives to answer. What followed was a catastrophic domino effect that astonished even the men who set it in motion. Russia began mobilizing its massive army in support of Serbia on July 30. Germany, honoring its blank check, declared war on Russia on August 1. 2 days later, Germany declared war on France and sent its armies surging through neutral Belgium, gambling on a rapid Western victory. Britain, bound by treaty to protect Belgian neutrality, declared war on Germany on August 4. In just over a week, a dispute between two nations in southeastern Europe had consumed the entire continent. Soldiers who had never left their villages found themselves marching toward battlefields they could not find on a map. Mothers kissed sons goodbye at railway stations, believing, as so many were told, that the boys would be home before the leaves fell. Governments that had believed they were managing a crisis discovered, too late, that the crisis was managing them. If this story has moved you, share it with someone who loves history. And if you want to go deeper into the events that shaped the modern world, there is an entire library of documentaries waiting for you on this channel. The men who signed those declarations of war in the summer of 1914 could not see what was coming. They could not see 4 years of trench warfare, poison gas, and industrial slaughter. They could not see the collapse of empires. The redrawing of maps, the seeds of an even more terrible war still a generation away. They believed they were making calculated decisions in a complicated world. They were, in truth, lighting a fire they had no idea how to extinguish. July 28, 1914 is not simply a date in a textbook. It is the moment an old world ended and a new, far more dangerous one began. It is a reminder that systems built on pride, fear, and secret promises do not fail slowly. They were not in control on that summer morning in 1914, and the world has never fully recovered from what came next.